Bigger than capes.
Give me some of that sadness.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it, and then I watched it.
Right.
Hello, welcome to Bigger Than Capes. I'm Zach, and this week I'm joined by Will. How you doing?
Howdy. I'm good.
Oh man, we're all over each other already.
Yeah, so the quality start. How you doing, buddy? Let's get this back online.
I'm pretty good. I can't complain. Things are what things are, and they are this.
Still indoors, but we're close. I think we're close to the rule of 6 coming back in because worked last time.
And then we all know what happens. Live outdoor location podcasts with all the wind blowing the mics around and us trying to scream at each other, traffic going past. I can't wait.
It's going to be great.
I think we're going to have a good old time.
I'm going straight out for the barbecue. Wind, rain or shine, the first opportunity. I'm going to eat some partially cooked meat off a lukewarm slab of metal.
I like to think this summer, Zach and Will's barbecue podcast.
Yeah, as you say, full wind, full rain, full misery.
We'll do like a YouTube show to double up with it so you can get the visuals.
Yeah. Schadenfreude.
I'm looking forward to that already. Cracking.
Me too.
But let's do our usual back and forth catch up thing. You've been doing much. You've been reading some comics, watching some comics, looking at comics in a mirror. I don't know.
I've been trying to catch up on some of my stories, Zach. Some of my online motion shows. All of the like dumb sci-fi TV I watch basically. So I've started The Expanse finally.
Oh, it's good, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it is good, and it was always good, but I'm glad to be back. I just like those characters very much, and I think particularly Amos. Really, really warm towards Amos throughout. He's super interesting.
Amos is good, and I think this season 5?
5, yeah.
I think we see him in a different kind of scenario, and it's interesting in a different way, and that appeals to me a lot. I feel like we've seen a lot of him kind of with Holden and with Naomi, and I think getting him like doing his own thing, it's a whole different kettle of fish.
And I'm nearly back up to date with Snowpiercer season 2.
Haven't even started it.
Oh, it's got a lot more Sean Bean in it.
I mean, it's never a bad thing, is it?
That should be enough to draw you in. I think it's a show that will have a limited lifespan. Like, I don't think it should be one of those kind of indefinite running shows. But where it is at the moment, I'm enjoying it. I think maybe 2 more series and then cap it off would feel about right to me. But digging it at the moment. That's
cool. I'll definitely get to it at some point, inevitably.
I like those kind of bottle scenarios where everybody's stuck in one place for some reason.
Yeah. There's been a few good ones.
Making that a train at the end of the world is a pretty cool place.
It's definitely a different place to be, I feel like I've gone in a completely different direction with what I'm watching at the moment, and against all the odds, I'm watching Friends from College, which was something I was going to watch like 2 years ago because occasionally Netflix comedies appealed to me, and
of course
I just didn't. I left it 2 years. I think it's only 2 seasons long, and I decided to come back to it and actually watch more than one episode because I don't know why not. It's
how was it doing for you?
I think if it wasn't for the cast, I wouldn't be here. So, like, it's Keegan-Michael Key, Kobe Smulders, Fred Savage. It is a good cast, but it's kind of, there are more actors. Life's too short. It's a good cast doing this kind of, hey, you know, we've been friends since college and we're still friends, and should we be? And I'm not sure it's good, but the cast are keeping me there. And every now and again, there's like a legit laugh out loud moment to like make me think it's worthwhile, you know?
I mean, I absolutely get that. There are plenty of shows that I've probably watched longer than they deserved being watched. I think me and my better half finished Superstore, or at least what's available of Netflix. And to be honest with you, I think I sort of lost interest by around the end of the third season. And,
definitely, right? I think we're
just
halfway through season 5 and could not care less.
I don't think it's a show that should be binged. I don't think I don't think it was really made for it. And when you watch too many of them together, it just merges into one real mess of American sitcom.
Yeah, I think if I was getting it on a weekly basis for 5 years with season breaks, I think I would be like more into it and more forgiving. There's some really like interesting and well-intentioned stuff in it. I think kind of when they get into all the union stuff, and
I've kind of got very little negative to say about it. Like, it is funny and it is pleasant, and like you say, it's also well-meaning, and it's quite like, it's sort of inclusive and has all those.
Yeah, it takes a lot of good boxes. Don't be wrong.
It's just too much of the same for too long.
Yeah, definitely, and I think there is a shelf life on that. Nice. You're welcome. I think season 5 is hard. I don't know how long it's going to take me to finish, because we like binge watched 3 seasons, and then 4 and 5 have been slow.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you know, it's good. I just don't think I'm watching it the right way. I don't think any of us are.
No, but I flicked on an episode of Parks and Rec the other day and just remembered how divine that show is. And it sort of makes everything just so pale in its comparison.
I actually only found out the other day that The Good Place was made by the same people as Parks and Rec, and suddenly everything kind of adds up in my mind.
You know, I've never watched it. Is it worth a watch?
Definitely, yeah. It's good stuff. It doesn't outstay its welcome, and it's ridiculous. So also Ted Danson. So,
well, yeah, Ted Danson.
Ted Danson. You know, Marta hasn't seen Parks and Rec, so maybe.
It's really great. I mean, it's one of those shows, and I hate it when people say this to me, but it gets really good from the second season. I don't think the first season's bad, but it's forming the characters, and they're not quite there. And then season 2, perfect. Nails it.
Yeah, season 1's very much finding its feet. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad I've seen all of it, and I had someone a couple of years ago tell me that the best way to watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer is to just skip season 1.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, all right, not going to do that, because what? But what mad world would it be where you just skip a season and just go, no, I'll start season 2, episode 1, thank you. I'll figure it out myself. It's like, why?
Well, I mean, you and I as well share, particularly in our comics reading, the notion that we must read all and really start from the beginning of something. And it's a bit of a compulsion, I think, for both of us. And I'm sure that goes over to television as well. But yeah, I used to work with somebody who just picked up Game of Thrones at like season 5 or so. It's just like, I just watch it from there.
I watched 3 seasons of Game of Thrones in a week to catch up, damn it.
Absolutely. And I just don't understand it. I don't understand how you can enjoy that, or why it's worth your while to have part of a story. Like the enjoyment for me is the full arc, where it starts, how it changes, and where it ends is a story.
I am deeply upset that you know someone who thinks that like Game of Thrones is like a midpoint jumping on series. It's not like The Simpsons, is it? It's not like it doesn't matter what you've missed.
No, I mean, it was somebody in my defense who I worked with. It wasn't. It's not someone I keep as a close friend.
Not someone you'll be further associated with.
No, distancing myself now from that notion.
But yeah, no, I think we are very similar. The comic book thing is obviously a problem, and yeah, I can't skip a full season of something.
No.
And the reality is, if I hate that season enough to not watch season 2, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But yeah, jumping in the middle of stuff. I mean, that is weird, isn't it? Because in comics, like, you have to do that a lot. Yeah,
especially with the old Marvel and DC stuff, you're kind of heavily dependent on the idea that you haven't read it all. I've always found it odd when indie comics do the whole like, "Hey, start here, it's okay." It's like, I don't feel like it's going to be okay, man.
Yeah, when indie comics do jump on points, they're like, we've only got like 10 other issues out.
But it's okay. Just start here. Start issue 11. You'll be. It's like Valiant do it all the time. Valiant, they used to do it more. Used to do this like new arc, new jumping on point. It's like there's like 3 trades. It's not like I have to read from 1960 and through to now. I can just I can handle 12 issues. That's okay.
Yeah, I'll do it.
But then I guess you can't print everything that. You can't print single issues and be like, start at the beginning.
Yeah, don't. Instead of buying this now, buy the one that we don't make money off anymore. Yeah, it's a good point, actually. It really doesn't work as a business model. If
I start making comics, and let's be honest, probably some point. That's the road we're on.
I'll probably just turn out to be a really great artist and never knew. And
I think I am going to run with hey, start at the beginning as like a banner for the top of every issue. Just like, just in case you were wondering, like, Don't start here. Go home. Get on Comixology. Order it off eBay. I don't care. Do not start at issue 4, damn it.
But I think that has been answered as well. I think a lot of the newer emerging companies are doing mini-series or much more contained volumes, TKO especially. But similarly, I think Vault have certainly like running series, but often rarely more than 3 trades or so.
That could be true. I can't think of any Vault series that's longer than 3 trades.
So I think, I like knowing that there is a story that I can finish. I like that safety net.
Which I feel like is something that we have covered before. But
oh, absolutely.
It's nice to, play the hits every now and again.
Yeah. Well, do you want to do any news?
I have a surprisingly small amount of news this week, and kind of news that's a bit of a downer. So we'd previously been super excited about a Vault title, which was Radio Apocalypse, which was meant to come out, I think. Mixed reports. I've heard people say the 7th of April, and I've heard people say the 24th of April. And it's been pushed back to October, which is
it's a bummer.
It's a long old time. It's had a major knock-on effect because I'd already started planning the April roundup, and that was it. They were just going to talk about that for an hour.
Yeah. Well.
So yeah, that's been a bit of a downer. I'm not going to lie. They've done all the stuff that everyone always does, where they're like, yeah, but it'll be an even better comic because of it. And it's like, I'm sure it might be, but
yeah, it's a shame. I think, like you say, if it needs the time to be better, then good. I think really it's probably COVID related, isn't it? It's most likely the answer.
I know when I spoke to Ron V last year, he talked about kind of problems in Mumbai and obviously collaborating like London to Mumbai with COVID. I can see that there must be the obvious problems across that. So
wow.
I don't know. I could read some articles and there's probably more information about the actual reasons, but I would assume that that's the one. And if it's not, well, do some fact checking and don't take my word for it, guys. You can Google just as hard as I can.
Absolutely.
That was my main bit of news. I've got other stuff. Inevitably, that's a word we don't get to say a lot with news.
No.
Matt Kint and Keanu Reeves' Berserker. Can you believe it? There's going to be a movie and an anime.
The only surprise is that it happened this way round, is that it started as a comic before becoming much, much higher selling media.
It's one of those where it's like, so the comic co-written by Keanu Reeves with the protagonist that looks like him. Mm-hmm. I bet he's going to be in it as well.
I mean, it with that and the Mark Miller thing, I'm both sort of equally excited and a bit worried. On the one hand, anything that brings these kind of smaller brand comics to a wider audience that then may decide to explore further into the world of comics, I think could be a good thing. On the other hand, it feels like comics are now just becoming storyboards for Netflix shows, and the potential exploitation that could be, that the comic is just made to simply legitimize it as a comic book adaptation.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me because I know there's been a lot of backlash about the Kickstarter campaign happened to fund the trades for Berserker, and then the singles have come out anyway before the people who kickstarted it have had any rewards. And then I'm seeing it from the point of view of the people who were just reading the comic, who are going, "Hey, this is really good." And it's like, well, it's Matt Kint, it's going to be. And I think it's interesting that we're seeing like both sides play out in real time, and like people using Kickstarter are appalled, obviously, and people who don't know about that and just wanted to read Berserker are super into it. And it's like it's rare that you get to. I'm neither.
Yeah,
I decided not to back it because when I think I saw it like a couple of days into the campaign, and they were like a couple of 100% over where they needed to be to fund it. Mm-hmm. So decided it was probably an inevitability. And I haven't read the singles yet. And yeah, I feel in a really weird space seeing like both sides reacting, and
now I don't mind people like making money. You know, I think for Matt Kint, being a co-writer on the comic, I assume means there's some royalties from the inevitable film and anime.
Oh yeah, of course.
And that's great for him because, as we both know, like comics is not it's not a blingy world. So if you can turn some of your properties into gold, then go for it.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I know we're both big Matt Kint fans, and I think he's been killing it with indie series for years, let's be honest. So yeah, I think he deserves to make some money from comics and from adaptations, and deserves some attention. And I think, whilst I understand the frustration if you back this on Kickstarter and then it's coming out as singles and everything else, and I can get that. I think you've got to appreciate that some part of you... Okay, no, all right. Some people who've backed it on Kickstarter have probably backed it because they're Matt Kint fans and Keanu Reeves is incidental. And I like to think that those people will appreciate that it's good for Kint's career, and, you know, that's good. But... yeah, I don't know.
That's it. Like I don't resent anybody for making money out of it. I guess my overall concern is not with the individual property, but is it just something that's going to drive the bubble to burst? Like the more you make of these, inevitably, the cheaper and worse they get as other people and other studios want to put out their version and then their version. And superheroes are already down that alley. Like, I think there are some very poor facsimiles of what Marvel, and I'm going to be fair, sometimes DC can produce. But I think when you start getting into the indie comics, which in many ways reflect television anyway, there's not a huge amount of difference between a sci-fi comic and a sci-fi TV show, broadly. Yeah. I just don't want them to all get eaten up into the machine I like comics as a medium on its own, and I don't want it to just become. It's already pretty secondary to a lot of the other big mediums, and I just don't want it to get more devoured. I
think it's interesting as well because we obviously see things almost in parallel here, because me and you have been looking back at a lot of 90s films that happened because of Batman 89. So we talked about The Shadow, and we talked about
The Phantom.
The Phantom, yes. We've also had Angela's history lessons on Valiant, and how if you and if you mine things for ideas, it can be a horrible mistake. And I think that's a similar kind of thing. It's like, whilst, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed The Shadow and I enjoyed The Phantom, and there's other 90s films that happened, like The Crow. The Crow is a great example, actually. Mm-hmm. And I think we get some great films from the comic book being successful in adaptations, but I think it's an awkward place when comics happen to make the films, and it doesn't feel like... There are a bunch of places you can cast Keanu Reeves as a superhero.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he's also the figurehead of a video game.
Yes, I don't know. Keanu's having a weird old time right now.
I think his kind of tickets come up, hasn't it? I think John Wick sort of really reinvented his career, and then with Bill and Ted 3 maybe coming out at some stage. Yeah. And being in a video game and now being in a comic, I just think his popularity has never been quite so blooming, even I think during the Matrix days. Mm-hmm. I think now he just seems everybody's sort of Hollywood sweetheart.
And it's strange because, all right, I'm a Bill and Ted guy, as we all know. So
me too,
I've been a Keanu fan for probably too long, but was everybody else not? Is this like a recent... It feels like everyone's new to the Reeves game, and I feel it's weird to me.
I think there's been a long period of anti-Keanu, and I think it's time to stop.
Well said.
Thank you.
So, from the weird side of Kickstarter, should we progress to the positive side of Kickstarter, or have you got some more news up your sleeve?
No, let us progress.
So, both myself and William here backed a Kickstarter at some point last year. I don't remember when. From A Wave Blue World, which are a publisher that deal broadly entirely in anthologies.
I couldn't say that for certain. It's certainly everything I've got from them has been in anthology form, but
yeah, I'm going to go with they're the anthology guys right now. And a couple of years ago, they did a Kickstarter for a book called All We Ever Wanted, which was a sci-fi anthology that was all about, kind of positively looking towards the future. And last year, they did a kind of spiritual sequel to that, which is called Maybe Someday. Stories of Promise, Visions of Hope. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm trusting Will to be able to count here. There are 27 stories to go at in this one.
By my last count, I'm not going to do it again for you now, so that's now truth.
If there are more and we're getting this wrong, sorry. Tweet us, comment on Instagram. I don't know.
Yeah, it's 27. Counted them again. I did it.
Some fast counting, that's what you're here for, Will.
My insecurity got the better of me.
But there is a good selection of creators in on this book. I think that is something we can both agree on. If I could scroll to the right page, I would tell you who those creators are. So the names that jumped out to me and got me backing a book I was already going to back, let's be honest. So we've got Dan Kibblesmith, Michael Marecki.
I've always gone for Marecki, but hey,
yeah.
I'm not sure I'm the guy to ask.
No, neither of us are. We're terrible with names.
So bad.
Stephanie Phillips, Zoe Thorogood, Natasha Alterici, who we actually discussed a book by in January and said that we would be back for anything else she did. And here we are.
And equally Aubrey Citizen, who we discussed No One Left to Fight.
Someone did. I did. With that other guy that comes on the show sometimes. What's he called?
Michael. Mad Dog? No.
Mad Dog Michael, that is it. Yeah, that's
Mad Dog Michael.
Our co-host, Mad Dog Michael. No. With Matt, we discussed Aubrey Citizen's No One Left to Fight. There are a lot of other good creator names in there, and I'm willing to admit there are people here I did not know who I am now glad that I do know.
Oh, absolutely. I think interviewee Joe Glass as well. Also Max Bemis.
Max Bemis, who we covered another book by only a couple of weeks ago, which was Savage #1.
Oh, yeah. But point being, really good lineup.
Yes. Really good lineup. And I think we both have a soft spot for anthology books. I think we've mentioned it in the past. Mm-hmm. I think we both missed a Wave Blue World's previous Kickstarter for All We Ever Wanted, but I think we've both picked it up now. And I'm glad I have. I read it a couple of weeks ago. I don't think you have yet, but it's good.
No, absolutely. I've been, in the same real context, I've been reading a lot of 2000 AD and Judge Dredd.
Okay, yep.
And they're like the polar opposite of this, just the grimmest version of
the grimmest future
society. Yeah.
But I've gone through a bit of a sci-fi anthology stint. I read the Stairway anthology from Image a couple of months ago. I also picked up some of the Vertigo one-shot kind of anthologies they've done in the past. I've got Time Warp and Strange Adventures on Comixology, which are from 2011 and 2013. So a bit of a deep dive. They've probably done some that are more recent than those that I've just not read. I don't know what my point was.
No, I think anthologies on the whole, I think was where you were running.
Yes.
But I like the little once and done stories that when they revolve around quite a simple message, but particularly in this book, express that message in often a pretty interesting and very nice to look at way.
Yes, I agree.
It's a bit of a mangling of the English language, but hey.
That's what we're here for.
Change is constant.
Well said.
Something I feel we may have discussed beforehand, but we're going to approach this of picking 5 stories each from this book.
Yes, I was going to get onto this and just didn't.
Yeah, here we are. Have you actually ordered them? I've picked 5, but I've not necessarily put them in order.
As it happens, no. I listed 5 in the order they appear in the book. I did not order those 5 in any way, shape, or form.
I don't think I want to.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy for us to just hit 5 stories that are our top 5 in no particular order.
Yeah, these 5 stood out to me, but there isn't a bad story in this book.
No, and let's be honest, this could equally be our, top 27.
Sure.
Or whatever number. I know when I messaged you about this earlier today, it was like, hey, I have a top 12 list. How's your top 5 going? So, yeah, I'm happy to start wherever you kind of want to start. Do you want to go kind of one for one? And
I think that's the right way around to do it. I'll kick it off, if you like.
Right. Confident, like that.
Because my first pick is the very first story of the book.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, it's called The Invasion. It's written by Ryan Cady, art by Mike Feehan, and letters by Troy Pateri. It's the seeming story of these 2 robots after the human race has gone from Earth, and these 2 robots are left to sort of be the caretakers. And as that's happening, an alien invasion approaches the Earth, and it seems very typical of a kind of apocalypse story. And then every twist is just a really positive twist. Like the aliens arrive, and instead of coming to conquer, they've come to try and meet humanity because they are so obsessed with the art and culture that humanity has managed to produce.
Just real big fans.
that they needed to meet them before they became extinct. And then you find out they're not extinct. We just left. Humans are out there somewhere still, doing art.
This was very nearly on my list, I'm not going to lie. It's really good. I like that these kind of robot custodians have just got like iPad screens for faces with really basic emoji.
Yeah, emoji expressions or little bits of punctuation. Like I love that in Descender. Yes. And I love it here too.
Definitely. But this is a really cool start to the book. I don't know why I couldn't find the word there. Book. There's some good artwork. I like that we get like the classic alien invasion over all the major monuments type thing. The like constant swerves that the aliens are nice, the aliens just like us. Mm-hmm. Kind of reassuring, because there are times when I think we might suck. But
absolutely. But no, I like that it acknowledges the positive parts of kind of humanity, and it's a real celebration of pop culture. One of the robots is collecting little trinkets, but they all turns out to be toys and figurines and posters and comics and games and all sorts of stuff. I mean, I don't know how they got away with this. I assume they just sort of balls the licenses and decided to do what they wanted.
Yeah, everything's close enough, but not quite. There's some great stuff though. We get a panel of a alien painting a painting of Bob Ross painting. Yeah. And which is immediately then followed by a Planet of the Apes stage show and an alien listening to Run DMC on his, well, it looks like an iPod, let's be honest. And yes, good stuff. Yeah. Good stuff.
They're just excellent little references to pop culture. And like I say, like there's Batman in it. We get some Picard. Like you say, Run DMC are named. I don't know how they... Can you imagine putting any of this into a Marvel book? It'd never stand, but I like their audacity.
Incidentally, I remember being at a panel with Kieran Gillen where he talks about how he got away with using known music in like New Avengers by making sure all the lyrics were slightly wrong. So maybe that's what this is. It doesn't look enough like Picard, and it's not quite Batman. I don't know.
It reminds me of Sex Criminals, and is it Big Bottom Girls that?
Yeah, and they like put post-its over it, and they were hoping to fix it by the trade, and they never cleared the rights.
Yeah, and it never happened. So the trade is slightly different, but is still all
same,
covered up.
Same jokes, and it's still funny.
Yeah, still good.
Incidentally, Fat Bottom Girls might be one of the best Queen songs. Just gonna.
It's a great tune. Queen have a good old raft of them, though, eh?
I mean, yeah, I guess that's kind of like Queen's thing, that they were quite good.
They were pretty good, yeah.
For more hot takes on classic rock.
But the invasion, it's great, really, really great opener, and I think sets the tone really nicely for the rest of the book. It is very light-hearted, and although the art is like really detailed and nice, it's not overly cartoony. It's pretty colourful, and it's sort of inviting to look at.
Yeah, I think it's quite good and quite, I don't know. I don't know what the words are I want for this art. Damn, I am a terrible podcaster. It kind of manages to capture like the terror of the oncoming invasion, and then still maintains that it is funny enough in the next panel almost immediately. And I think it's just, it's just good all around art. I could see this in a lot of different books, and
yeah, definitely.
Hopefully we will. I don't know.
It's a great advert for the artist.
Yeah, and I think that is something that is true throughout this anthology. I think there is arguably no bad art. I think it's all a great like taster for what you could get more of. But yeah, art is good, writing is good, concept is good.
Cracking opener. What's your first pick?
So my first pick is Alice in Wonderland, which is different.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the story of, I think, 12, we're told, 12 dreamers who one day never woke up and ultimately reshaped the earth in their image.
Sort of dream image.
So it's nuts, I think is the correct term for the world we get. It's just a bit surreal, but in kind of a adorable way. We've got minotaurs wearing kilts. We've got guys with cameras for heads. We've got
who I'm pretty sure
buildings.
Was a dog.
Yeah, there's definitely a mention.
I think that guy might have been a dog, but it was written by Eric Palicki.
By
Sally Jane Thompson. This. Yeah, you should have. And letters by Matt Krotzer. It is a much more kind of cartooning style, isn't it, than the Invasion, or probably most of the book. I think it is one of the more sort of short of anime, but
somewhere in that. Maybe, you know what? Maybe we're in more of a like She-Ra, Kipo kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. Space, that kind of look,
which is entirely my space, to be fair. So.
Yeah.
But I think part of the reason I wanted to run with this is like top of the list, or appearing top of my list, is that I don't think there's another story in this book that is like this. I think there's some similarities between a lot of the others.
Yeah.
And this is real different. And this is a lot more fantasy than sci-fi, I would argue.
Yeah. I like the way it's portrayed as well. Like the fact that she's in a dream, her clothes just change sometimes.
Yeah. Inexplicably. I mean, everything just changes sometimes, I think is...
Yeah. I think she even says, like, last week, for instance, Jerry's head was a toaster and Tucker was a cat.
Which is good. And I think I'm always attracted to stuff that's dream based because I was super into Sandman, which then led me in a direction of reading all the Sandman forever and all the tie-ins, and then reading. I checked out Queen of Bad Dreams a couple of years ago from Vault, which was dream based as well. So I think I am a sucker for anything that gets away with like ridiculous dream logic.
Ridiculous dreams. I'll tell you what, maybe not. Perhaps our podcast listeners don't care, but if you ever get the chance, the film Hourglass Sanatorium.
Okay.
I think it's a really old, perhaps Polish film, but it's the closest thing I've ever seen to watching a dream. It's really, really insane.
Okay, that is a hell of an advert. So I'll
you check that
I'll
out.
look into that. But yeah, I thought this was nice. I thought the twist at the end was nice, and
it's classic sci-fi anthology, isn't it? To just have the last bit is just the rug being pulled out from under you.
Yeah, it does feel very much like that kind of Future Shocks, like last minute, here's the swerve.
Yeah.
What are you going to do now? And I'm all for it. I think it works. I think it's a nice ending. I'm not going to give this one away.
No, I think that's worth saving.
And I think this is fun, ridiculous, and adorable. I think that's my them are the words I'm associating with Alice in Wonderland.
They're the boxes you're ticking. Also,
pun name, 5 stars.
Yeah. Give me a pun name and I'm yours. Right, shall I do my next one?
Yes, which, if I'm right in what your next one is, are we just doing this like in the order these stories appear now?
It would appear so far, yeah. I think I've written my list in that order. I think that's how I went through the book in order and picked out my stories. So, yeah, this should work. But, yeah, my next one is the immediate next story after Alice in Wonderland, Support Animals. It is written by Jono Diner. The line art is by Sebastian Perez, colours by Sean Struble, and letters by Jim Campbell. Apologies in advance for everybody's name. It's probably awfully offensive. But it's a really great comic. It's the story of a man who is seemingly so depressed he's prepared to commit suicide, end his life, until his cat talks reason into him, talks him literally down off the ledge, takes him out for a walk where he finds that other people's pets are talking to him, and I assume their owners.
I guess.
And that shows him that he's not kind of alone in the world with his feelings and his emotional state. And it results in him eventually beginning the kind of road to recovery.
Yes. Yeah.
By the end of the story. I think first off, like, I think it is a really, really good depiction of depression.
It is, definitely.
I think that sense of just hopelessness and like pointlessness are really prevalent. I think that does the cat have a name? He does, doesn't he? Definitely got a name.
I feel like he must. Yeah.
Victor the cat. Victor's advice is really good advice. Like, it's not playing around for the joke. Like, Victor provides serious and sensible advice.
Yeah, I think I told myself I wasn't going to go to this place, but I have to. In advance, Will, I am sorry, but All-Star Superman.
Go on.
It's regularly cited to me by friends, strangers, anthropomorphic shark people, whoever, everybody. It's like an agreed upon opinion that the scene where the goth kid is going to jump off the building and they don't believe that their therapist is running late, and Superman swoops in to go, hey, it's going to be okay, your therapist is really running late. And everyone always cites this as like, this is amazing, and this tells you how good Superman is, and this is this is the highlight of this book. And as someone who's been depressed, I could not disagree more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just the take on it that a single moment can change a person's entire emotional state, particularly through a mental illness, like a genuine mental illness. What I really like about this book, coming sternly away from All-Star Superman.
No, my entire point was going to be, this is everything that people think that scene in All-Star Superman is.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. What I really, really like about it is it has a positive end. At the end, our main character, whose name beeth
Nathan. He's called
Victor's
Nathan.
the cat. Nathan is the man. Once he's been out and he's seen other people's animals, which are obviously metaphors for kind of subconscious or a kind of...
Yeah, I think subconscious...
I don't think you need to really know, but
yeah.
There's definitely some greater connection. But it ends on a positive note broadly. But it also ends in such a way that it acknowledges that the character isn't fixed, and that there will be an ongoing sort of process for him. And it just ends the book with the cat saying, tomorrow we'll call a therapist. Sound good? And I really like the fact that it doesn't just go, and his cat made him better.
Yeah.
He cheered up.
For a book with talking animals, I feel like this does feel very real. And
you say that as if a book with talking animals is in any way a negative.
No, don't get me wrong. No, talking animals all day, but talking animals in a book that then feels realistic is, I think, that's a weird space to live in, but I'm okay with it. And I guess it's that delicate balance that it doesn't need to be Victor the cat that says all these things to Nathan.
No.
But it works that it is. And if it isn't a talking cat, I guess this isn't really a sci-fi book.
I suppose not. I think.
I don't know.
It's one of the stories I think that gets its message across most clearly.
Yeah, and anyway. there are a few stories in Maybe Someday that have a very like clear message with like no hesitation, and it's like, hey, here's the message. And I don't think any of them struggle to tell the story they're trying to tell, or struggle to tell the message at least. But I think this is a good message, and I think this is an important message, and
completely agree.
Also, Talking Cat that also manages to tuck him in, which is
Victor. What a little beauty.
I wish my cat could learn such skills. Instead, he just focuses on making me bleed.
I wish my cat provided any form of kind of emotional support. She'd be a really crap support animal.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. Do you want to go on for your choice, buddy? Your next one?
Yes, and I assure you there will be no All-Star Superman from here on out. I hope. So, funnily enough, my second pick is the next story in Maybe Someday. I feel like we've hit a real patch here. I don't know if this carries... I don't think this carries on after this. But...
No, I think there will be a little gap, but at some point. But yeah, go on.
Yeah. So my next pick is Empathy for the Devil, which is written by Ren Famus, arted by Josh Hood, coloured by Chris Sotomayor, with flats by Paul Heskell, and lettered by Taylor Esposito, who I don't know if he's my favourite letterer, but he does have my favourite name of a letterer.
Yeah, it's a really fun name to say.
Yes. More about the book, you ask. So this story kind of follows the trial of a man by the name of Benjamin Banks, who he's been in court a lot. He's done a lot of bad stuff. And, I think they are listed. So, he's aggravated harassment, violation of a no contact order, and throwing a power cell into someone's windshield. And classics, all in all, which have kind of, got him that he should go to jail. But instead, they're going to punish him by making him wear
Google Glass.
Yeah, futuristic Google Glass, much like we've seen in Friendo, that will allow him to see kind of other people's stories, I guess. So kind of...
Yeah, sort of statuses.
Yeah, see what's happening with them, kind of personal journal entries that they can add, so that he will be punished with forced empathy, I guess is the correct way to describe it.
Yeah.
And we'll suddenly be aware if people are in debt and if people are struggling with life, as many of us are. And in return, everyone will also be able to see what's going on in his life, or Indeed. Not going on in his life.
Well, yeah, as the case turns out.
But again, much like we said with the book we just talked about, Support Animals, I think there is a good message here, and maybe not the same kind of message, but a message that I think people overlook, that everybody is going through something.
Yeah. I also just think broadly the idea of empathy being a punishment for a crime seems like an incredibly utopian idea.
Yeah.
We're going to punish you with compassion, baby. Get ready. You're going to feel so good.
It's a really good move, I'm not going to lie. And I think...
But I like the way that it also kind of works.
Yeah, and I think even in these, 5 pages maybe? Slightly more? Slightly more. 8 pages maybe, 10 pages. We do see kind of the effects that it immediately has on old Benjamin Banks, who... does seem like he is kind of the worst.
Oh, he does come across as absolutely the worst. But upon kind of losing his temper with a stranger, and then sees her kind of, like you say, her little update, her little story.
Yeah.
and it's kind of crappy, and he immediately then grows some empathy.
Yeah, which, it's a little bit of an immediate turnaround, but I think that coupled with kind of other people commenting on how perfect his life appears to be, I think there's a good brief progression there. I feel like this could be part of a much larger story. This could almost be like the opposite of Friendo in a way.
Yeah, the sort of positive Friendo. I mean, there is that slight question. Maybe this is baked into me from my many years of dystopian sci-fi. It feels like it leans into technology is the answer.
Yeah, we get that kind of like Jules Verne, H.G. Wells argument of, is technology going to be what kills us all, or is it a really good thing and we can live under the sea in a giant submarine?
Yeah.
That was a very specific example, but
hopefully, though, I look forward to that. But also, I thought the last bit when he looks at his little story, and because he's not engaged with this empathy machine at all, like he's got nothing. Yeah. And I see that as him, like that's his clean slate. That's his opportunity to rewrite who he is and stop being a D-bag.
I think that's definitely fair. And I think for quite a simple story, I think there's quite a lot to like here and a lot to make you think. Zach out.
Mic drop. So my next one isn't immediately the next one.
Damn. We're on such a good roll.
That's not to say that the ones in between aren't excellent.
There's some good stuff in between. I think, is it the first person that's next?
First person's was really great. I really enjoyed.
Yeah, very, very close to being on my list. It's definitely on my top 12 list.
I thought A Dangerous Lesson was pretty good. That had nice art in it.
Yeah.
Unwritten, I thought is one of my favorite art pieces in the book. I must say I didn't really. I kind of grasped the overarching point, but I'm not sure how the dialogue boxes and the art actually correspond.
That was the only thing that kept Unwritten out of my top 5 is I think the narration is good. It's good narration, and I think the art is good. I'm just not sure how much they complement each other. I feel like it's two good things happening side by side rather than together, as we've seen with all the stuff we talked about so far.
Yeah, so slightly funny on that one, but enjoyable nonetheless. And then the one immediately after it, 4 Things That Made 6103 Extra Up-Wowsical.
I could look at this for another 12 hours, as I have done last night, and I still don't know if I'd have the answers.
I'm not sure there are. It's just a 1-page, 4-panel comic of complete absurdity, and it looks amazing.
I wonder, and I thought this when I read it, I say read it, when I looked at it, I wonder if there's am I going to wake up in a cold sweat and be like, oh my God, I get it? Is that...
Mellishing the froob, of course. Now I get it.
Maybe not. I don't know, Will. God, I hope I do. I hope it is an immediate revelation. I'm like, oh my God, I understand.
It's wild. I mean, it looks and feels a lot like an acid dream, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But I get on to my next pick.
Yes. Sorry.
My next pick is 50% Solution. It is written by Robert Lee, art by John McFarlane, colours by Oliver Mertz, and letters by Taylor Esposito.
Our guy.
He's back, baby. Go on, Taylor.
Big way.
And the premise of this book is that they have found a second Earth in a different Earth 2.0 in an alternate reality that has seemingly been abandoned, or perhaps the original indigenous life has died out, because there are definitely signs of cities and society, but there's no one else there. So Earth 1 is at the very peak of population. So elect to move 50% of people to Earth 2 to be like pioneers from the Old West and kind of start again.
Yeah.
I think the premise initially is just really cool. Like the idea of frontiering, but on an entirely new Earth, an entirely new planet that is structurally identical to our own, but empty and new. I just think is a very cool area to run in.
Yeah, definitely. I felt like there was some Expanse vibes in this. You know, that is it season 4 where they go through the ring and they find the planet and they're like, hey, this is okay, we could live here. Not entirely the same, but some similar vibes.
Fascinating about exploration though, isn't there? And that idea of being the first person to set foot in this place and to transform it and to have it in this kind of way, this parallel Earth, I just think was a cool twist on a tried and true,
yeah, definitely
kind of device.
How did you feel about the kind of non-linear, reverse linear?
I really like the structure. I tried to think of different ways to describe it because it is odd, but it is kind of reverse chronology, working its way back from a year to like moments before the shift.
Yeah, so it's a kind of
back to a day maybe to the shift. So it works its way backwards from being sort of semi-established to their first arrival, and then retells that sort of reverse chronological jump through different perspectives of different characters, including
is she Sharon?
Absolutely, yes, she's Sharon, and she becomes the sort of de facto leader of the group, and we meet the scientist who kind of invented the technology and found Earth 2, and kind of his progression, and also that of what initially we believe to be Sharon's son, but appears to be having been randomly selected in the 50% population, is just a kind of random kid that's pulled with them and Sharon has adopted.
He's called Ardy, right?
Yes.
There we go.
And then in the last 2 pages, it's kind of a 2 years later shift. And the big twist, Angela should have been here for this. Dinosaurs, baby. There are still dinosaurs on Earth too.
Somehow in some way.
Yeah. And yeah, it ends with them just being in a society completely in symbiosis with Earth 2, riding dinosaurs around. What more could you ask for?
What could possibly go wrong?
I think the art and the colouring in this, I think, is really, really excellent. It's really detailed, and just all of the shading and stuff, and the colours are really vibrant.
Yeah, the art is good.
Very, very much like the art.
I feel like this is very similar to some of the artists that work with Vault and Aftershock. This could even be an artist that works with Vault and Aftershock. But this was an interesting one, and I feel like while some of the stories felt like they had quite a strong message, and some of the stories felt like they were quite straightforward in a lot of ways, I feel like this is a story that could have been way longer. And I feel like you could have easily been like a trade within its own rights of telling the story, and who knows, maybe it will be at some point. That's the kind of world we live in these days.
So.
But there's a lot to unpack, and I feel like the more I read this, the more I would probably gain from it.
Yeah, I would like to have seen this as an expanded story, but I think they get the points across in the pages they've got.
They do, and they have Triceratops.
And they have Triceratops as sort of like pets and stuff.
So can't knock it, can you?
You can. I loves it.
So on that note of notes, mine is incidentally the next story.
The very next story.
Nailed it. Which is The Garden by Stephanie Phillips, Zoe Thorogood, and lettered by ALW's Troy Pateri. And I don't know what ALW is, but I need to know.
I wonder why that's... Like, in this, it's ALW's Troy Pateri, but in The Invasion, which he also lettered, just Troy Pateri.
That's an interesting one. I hadn't thought about that.
Anyway, I recognised his name.
It's not. It doesn't matter. Probably not important, but it's the kind of trivial thing that, of course, will keep me awake at night.
Yeah.
So this is quite a straightforward story. It's quite a brief one as well, really, about the kind of perfect Earth, and a day in the park, only to be revealed that there is a bunker under the park, just full of humans in gas masks, because they think the world's ended. And they emerge from under the ground to just check in. It's been 10 years. There was a war happening last they checked, and they assumed that there was going to be radiation and a toxic wasteland, and there's not, because the robots they left behind to
fight their war.
Yeah, to fight their war and maintain the world, decided just not to, and to just chill and have a go at world peace in what can only be described as kind of like World War II outfits. I guess the fashion, I assume this is meant to be like World War II era, and everyone just decided to chill out.
It looks
not develop fashion, because do robots care? And
that's it. From the way the sort of robots are dressed and the kind of technology, the gas masks and that sort of stuff, it looks that era. But of course, they have also built these entirely sentient robots that figure out world peace.
And have USB sticks.
And have USBs in their arm, which would be super useful, wouldn't it?
I think it would help if I could just upload this directly into my arm rather than having to have a tablet. Or the physical book, because I have that as well. I don't know. But I really liked this. I thought it was simple enough. The kind of robots just decided, no, peace, actually. It's easy, innit? It's, it's your responsibility now that you know, but up until that point, had just a good, simple story. I think I've read a few of Stephanie Phillips' books now, and I think I'm pretty into the stuff she's been doing, and I think I'll eagerly have more. Zoe Thorogood's artwork is strange, but I like it a lot. I can't think of how else to describe it. People look quite flat, if that... Is that an insane statement? I don't know.
I think that's a lot in the colouring as well. There's very little shading. It's just mostly line work, and then relatively, like you say, kind of flat colours on it.
That definitely makes more sense than what I said. There's also a single page panel that's like a shot of a cross section of the bunker and all the ladders leading out of it, and the room full of bin bags, and just thought that was really well done and really the kind of thing I always like.
It reminded me of Fantastic Mr. Fox, Wes Anderson film, which is one of my absolute favourites. So that's good. That's a good thing.
That is a good thing. But I just really liked this. I thought it was nice, straightforward, simple, and kind of had the just the overall hope that is advertised with these, both this and the All We Ever Wanted anthology, where everything is hopeful, and just the idea that maybe everything will be okay and we don't have to all die in a war.
Perhaps not. Here's hoping. But I kind of like the part of the final message as well. It's when the humans incredulously asked, "So you're just going to fix everything and give us this utopia?" And the android says, "This is just sort of the template. No garden can flourish without maintenance." I think that's a a nice sentiment to leave it on. Like, this isn't easy. Like, you've got to work at this, but it is worth it. It's worth getting there.
I agree. I think it's a good message, and it is ultimately the right level of message. I think we see some stories across the anthology that are kind of, and the world was perfect. Mm-hmm. Which, hey, I'm not criticizing. I get it, but I think it's nice to have and the world is perfect, but you're gonna have to work on it still.
I think sometimes if you just land it too perfectly, it sort of trivializes the struggle.
Yeah, and I think the idea that, hey, it's perfect right now and it only took 10 years, but you could screw this up again. Humans, you guys are trash. So yeah, I big fan of the creative team, and I think they work really well together, and big fan of the overall, albeit quite brief, story.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. I think I'm afraid I'm going to break the trend. I think my pick is not the next story. And I think one of your picks is a previous story.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's true. My next pick is the next story. This is...
Yeah, ruin the running order. Never mind, it's my turn. So my next pick is The Medium is the Message. It's a slightly hard one to describe, but it seems to be about a covert agency called Narrative, who control or at least monitor all the various dimensions.
Yes,
as far as they can with infinite dimensions. But then is shown kind of through the lens of comic books. In particular, you have The Message, who is clearly a Superman analog. Mm-hmm. And in order to fix his latest crisis, which is never described, but really doesn't need to be, you know what that's going to be, looks to these other dimensions and to kind of his comic book counterparts to see if he can find a solution.
Yeah.
What I really liked about this is a lot of the time when comics and comic culture are referenced in comics, it's often sort of quite self-effacing and poking fun at comic culture.
Yeah.
And can often be a little bit negative as well. Like, despite the fact that I really like it, that I've just described The Boys, and sort of
you have
within its world rips into the worst parts of comic culture and the comic market. As where this just decides to look at the positives and how comics can be a force for good in the world in various different ways. And I guess by extension, like art in general, like art as an idea and a movement. But yeah, definitely through the lens of a huge love of comics.
Yeah, I think that's very true. It made me, obviously in a more, fictitious way, did make me think of like Fred Van Lente's, what are they called? The like comic book history of comics.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It was like an alternative reality version of that. And that is incredibly cool and completely bizarre. It's so like seeing the comic book history of worlds that don't exist is really interesting. And the fact that we see blatant references to other comics. So we see like the Peanuts reference and the Calvin and Hobbes and
just
Conan. Good stuff. Yeah.
But I think it shows kind of a love for also diversity in comics and the different forms that comics can take. They don't just settle on the sort of superhero element of it. It just feels like a real celebration of comics and art in general as a broadly positive thing for the world.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think doing that kind of investigation of how other comics exist and how other comics could have existed is really cool and different. And the fact that it doesn't have a conclusive ending and is quite, no, we haven't solved your crisis, but it's also very unclear as to how this was going to help, I think.
I don't know, at the end they hold hands and comic book characters turn up, but like she says, by the end, the comic just has a happy ending. Everything works out.
Things have a way of working itself out.
Yeah.
It's really cool. It's really interesting. This was also on my longer list. I liked this a lot. Hard to pin down how to talk about it because it's a weird, almost non-story, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, it's a look into these little sort of dimensions and a window in, and then a story about how comics affected that world. Like in the first one, it's a universe in which everything just went right. There are no wars, no crime.
Yeah.
And because of that, there was no news, and therefore everything that they put in the news is just comic strips because there's nothing else to write about.
Which is great. And then we see like the world where comics were used for historical purposes, and then ultimately what happens when you finished history, Will? You start predicting the future,
Predicting the future, yeah. Or one where the government create a sort of fascist pro-government character, and the kind of world of indie comics rises up and reinstates, like freedom and liberty. They're positive, like little mini stories, I think, that just highlight a different bit of the good part of comics.
Yeah, and there's definitely glimpses of real comic book history. So from kind of, I think it was Will Eisner who talks about how, sequential art started as cave paintings, which we see reflected here. We see the kind of alt comics movement reflected here with the political stuff, the comic strips. We do get a history of comics. It's just not the way you might expect.
No, just through a fantastical lens. But it looks really great, and I'm a big fan of comics, both from the stories and the characters, but as a broad medium as well. And I really enjoy these celebrations.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think it's nice sometimes to just acknowledge that comics are good.
Comics be good. Or they can be.
That's true. They can be. They're not always, but sometimes. On a good day. So my next shout is The Opt-Out, which follows on immediately from The Garden. If Will could please keep up with the regime we have here. The Opt-Out is by Natasha Alterici and arted by Martin Simmons, with letters by Jim Campbell, who I think has appeared previously as well as a letterer.
Indeed.
Both Natasha Alterici and Martin Simmons we've talked about the art and writing of in the past, and I like them both. So The Opt-Out is the story of a man, a consumer, if you will, judging by his name tag, bit weird, wandering into a shopping mall that is kind of dominated by two companies, the old-fashioned refreshments company and the Big Green Corporation. And kind of centers on his walk through this shopping mall where representatives from each company try and just sell him stuff.
Anything and everything.
Yeah, because they need to figure out what he wants, because consumerism. And they're trying to sell him phones and water and drinks, and water is a drink. Yes, shut up. And then they realize he's hungry, and they're trying to sell him burgers and organic, locally sourced salads. And then off the back of it, he just goes, you know what? No, I'm good. I'm going to leave, and I'm going to go out into this nice garden full of people just farming. And
people, nature, community,
sheep.
Yeah, I think the message again is quite clear on this one, is the sort of uncontrolled monopoly.
Yeah, and
is bad for the soul.
Which, just hitting you with the facts, I think, in this one. But I don't know, I don't know if it's the fact that it is really well written and really well drawn that got me, or the fact that it is just the honesty of kind of saying, like, no matter how the corporation presents itself, they're still probably a giant evil corporation. And the fact that you get valid questions like, how is the locally sourced organic salad more expensive than the cheap frozen burger? And it's like, how? And asking the questions of, like, well, where have you got tomatoes from when, if it's a seasonal salad and it's winter, what the hell, man? Which is all valid, good questions. I think it's full of, like, valid questions to ask of the larger corporate world we're imprisoned in.
Points out many of the things that we just take for granted, don't we? That's just how things are. It's how we buy things, and it's how they're produced, and there's a real acceptance of that. And this consumer decides not to. I really like how it boils down to just two companies. Like, they've swallowed up everything else. So Big Green and Old Fashioned are it. Like, there's basically the redneck and the hipster.
Yeah, and
and that's it. That's all that's left.
And there's a certain recognizability in that amongst
the company that tries to appeal to your nostalgia and the one that tries to appeal to the future, and both are kind of hollow.
Yeah, and I don't have a lot to say. I'm going to be honest with you, but I just thought this completely nailed what it was getting at.
Yeah, in terms of execution of a premise, it's perfect, isn't it? Like, the message is loud and clear, but it doesn't beat you over the head with it. It's not full of exposition. It's just very clever in its dialogue and tells you what it needs to just through conversation.
Yeah, which is, for something that is essentially quite a long conversation, I think it works. Also, as we said, we mentioned in January, I think it was, that we would happily read something from Natasha Alterici, and
now we have.
I think this works. I think this is good. And Martin Simmons' artwork as well, I don't know if it's just me, but is real different here at times than we've seen in Friendo. And
I think a lot comes down to the colouring, which I don't know if Friendo, which he did himself, or whether that...
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not sure. I feel like it's just stylized differently if he coloured them both himself. Don't get me wrong, there's clear similarities, and there's moments... It even looks like the guy from the Big Green Corporation is wearing the, like, Friendo style glasses.
Yeah, he does look a little similar.
Which I'm going to assume is intentional.
I certainly hope so.
There's definitely some evil corporation undertones in Friendo. Not tones, actually. There's just some evil corporations in Friendo.
Yeah.
Realize, like, no, not tones.
Yeah, it's not a metaphor.
Just the plot to the book.
They're just evil corporations.
But yeah, a lot of love for the opt-out. I think maybe it's just the place we're in right now as a people and the world we're in. But yeah, nailed it.
Nailed it. Okay, so my fifth and final pick is The Heroic Truth, written by Aubrey Sitson and Nick Pyle, with letters by Taylor Esposito, our favorite.
Oh yeah.
This is a hard one to describe what the story is about.
I'm just gonna sit back and let it roll.
So I'm not sure I'm gonna. What you get is the near wordless kind of battle and quest between two robot knight wizard warriors.
Could be.
I'm not quite sure what they are. I don't think it matters.
I appreciate the effort you have gone to try
but ultimately,
narrow that down.
These guys clearly don't get on, have a fight in which one of them loses an arm. He then comes back to sacrifice his own arm in kind of recompense. Wanders the land, has a premonition or a kind of epiphany.
Yep.
Comes back to his old fella who he's been fighting with. Now they only have one arm each, just the right amount to shake hands with. And then they go about kind of ploughing the earth and growing life instead of continuing one assumes their eternal cosmic battle that's been going on for millennia.
Yes, I think that is as close to a description of this book as we're going to get.
Yeah, it's an odd one. And on top of all of that, there's just kind of text boxes with kind of philosophical musings about individuality and cooperation and purpose and fellowship.
Yeah, I feel like this would work as like a silent story.
I mean, it almost is. I think the main character, whatever that name might be, says no twice.
And that's it.
I think that's it.
And yeah, Aubrey Citizen's narration is like a real, okay. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for it. I think the narration is good. Much like we said about Unwritten, I feel like the narration and the art are almost happening independently of each other. Mm-hmm. But I like it, and I think Nick Pyle's artwork is like it's a lot to unpack. It is the most cosmic of.
I think it's my favorite art in the book. Like it's super individual, and like you say, it's really detailed. The colors are insane. It's like a kaleidoscope. It reminds me of. Not that I really have read a great deal, but like old heavy metal.
Yes, it reminds me of heavy metal, and is it Space Riders that's been coming out through Black Mask, which is like...
Yeah, it's kind of that old sort of British indie style, like kind of British sci-fi it made me think of.
Yeah, and it's got like a very simple colour palette to it, which is like blindingly neon.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the best possible way. I feel like this is the kind of book that could give you a headache if you stare at it too long. And again, that's a compliment.
It's got a slight like copra vibe.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in the colours, but certainly in the drawing. Really like 80s, as he said, like Neon Nightmare.
Yeah, I can see this being like drawn on the side of some guy's van.
Definitely. I think I thought both the philosophizing is really good, and like I agree with the points that are being made.
Yeah,
but really, like
true.
It was the art that tipped this for me. I just think it looks absolutely stunning.
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that we've got a lot of love for Aubrey Citizen, but yeah, on this one, I feel like he's doing a great job with the narration, but Nick Pyle is killing it on the art.
I mean, if that had no words whatsoever, I think I'd have still enjoyed it.
Quite possibly. I would gladly see a longer collaboration from these two.
Mm-hmm.
Hell, I'd gladly see a longer version of this story. Just two guys wailing on each other for all eternity.
Until they have a little robot baby.
And start a farm.
Collect light bulbs from trees. I don't get it, but it's great.
It's one of those where it's like, I love it. It's amazing, but every bit of it was like, okay. Yeah.
Don't know what that is, but
not sure how to interpret these things, but 5 stars. We're gonna say it probably about this entire volume, but I feel like I'm gonna come back to a lot of these stories again in the future, and I feel like it's the kind of thing where I will like read something else and it will remind me of something here, and I'll want to check it out again.
Yeah, it's the sort of book that I want other people to read, so I can then just talk about it again.
Yeah, and it's I think it is now up on Comixology, so people can do that. People should do that. So I have one more story left.
You've got one more to pick.
One more, and my last pick is Conflicted by Darren Bennett, Marika Cresta, with that's writing and arting, respectively, with Gab Contreras on colours and Shuffle Peterson on flats, with letters by AW's DC Hopkins. What the hell is AW?
AW's back.
I feel like there's going to be a really obvious answer to what all these little like ALW, AW things are, and
I wonder if there's like a letters union. And this is the union they come from.
It bothers me though that this is AWs and the previous one was ALWs, and it's like, are they the same? Was this just? Is it a disagreed upon? I don't know. That's not the point.
We'll never know.
I'm going to find out. Goddamn. Right. So the story here is pretty straightforward. Mm-hmm. So it is about a girl who I don't think is named, who is trying to write a school report on the biggest challenges being faced globally and conflict resolution. Mm-hmm. The problem being that they live in a, awesome futuristic utopia and everything's rad. So her mum kind of advises her, like, hey, look into the past. You'll learn something from history and you'll see how conflicts were resolved. So she does some Googling for problems solved 500 years ago, mm-hmm. and kind of discovers climate change, corruption, disease, poverty, and racism. And mm-hmm. I'm sure others. Those are just the ones we get, and kind of, gets real sad about all of these things. And the mum's like, everything gets better because of love, and that's just a really good message. But
it's a nice message.
I think I liked this so much because it's kind of, whilst simplified, does show how absolutely ridiculous some of the problems we face now are.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you put them on paper and look at them with logic, you think, actually, how have we ended up here?
Yeah, how are we still struggling with any of this? It's like, how are we still struggling with racism or poverty or disease? Well, disease, okay, I guess that's more of a slow.
That's harder to control.
That's a slow crawl.
Certainly, like as you say, poverty is something that should just have stopped.
Yeah, and
I got the ability to do that.
I feel like we should have really, solved racism by now, but people are.
They've done it in Star Trek, by God.
Yeah, and what I was told by a media teacher many moons ago that sci-fi predicts the future. How did we get Picard's fucking iPads before people fixed racism and money? Because they were way more important to the plot of Star Trek than Picard having an iPad.
That's true. But corruption and greed is way more important to most sci-fi.
True.
Star Trek was kind of the outlier of being the positive future.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, that's...
I'll tell you what this reminded me of when she's the unnamed schoolgirl looks up the past. It reminded me a lot of Fifth Element.
Okay.
Levy Multipass, which is her full name, looks through the history of the world, and it's just all like just war and hate.
Yeah.
And then loses her mind, and it has that similar vibe of just filtered history, and you just take all the negative stuff.
Yeah, and I agree, actually. Yeah, I think the Fifth Element comparison does definitely work. I hadn't thought about that. Well done, Will.
I'm always thinking about the Fifth Element in one way or another.
With good reason, it's great. But I just thought this, whilst a lot of the stories we get here are kind of big sci-fi stories or small sci-fi stories, this is almost a slice of life, hopeful future story. Mm-hmm. That's a lot to process as a sentence.
A lot to digest. I'll ask you one question. When the girl types in, you can see what she's typing. And in order to kind of resolve the situation, her mum types in love in 2020s, and we get a little sort of collage about, like you said earlier, how kind of love saves the day.
Yeah.
Did you read Love in 2020s with the melody from Love in an Elevator? Because now you will.
I did not, but thank you for once again using Aerosmith to ruin the day.
It's there forever.
Yeah, that's going to be burnt into my mind.
Love in 2020s. Good night, children.
Wow, Queen and Aerosmith all in one podcast episode. Was the world ready?
We're such young men.
So that is the end of our lists. I feel like we could have talked about every single story in maybe someday.
And that's it. I want to repeat, like, there's not a bad story in here, but just for the sake of time, we had to narrow it to just a handful of picks. But no, fully recommended. Well worth a read for anybody, I think. Yeah.
I mean, just flicking through like what the pages are that we've not talked about. There's the stories we've not talked about. There's really simple things in here that are awesome. Like Unwritten, as we've said, was a weird combination, but I think it was good. But really liked Birthday Surprise, actually, which is a kind of latter story. I think it's one of the last like 2 or 3. But yeah, just nice, optimistic sci-fi from start to finish. And yeah, definitely would recommend everybody picking this up.
And incredibly strong art pretty much throughout. Like there was a story early on, Droplets, that we haven't touched on, with art by Isaac Goodhart and written by Connor Knudsen. I'll go through the rest now, Mia. Colours by Gab Contreras, with flats by Cheffel Peterson, and great letters by Taylor Esposito. I think I need to start monetizing that somehow.
Yeah, if we can get a kickback from Taylor every time we say his name. But I don't know if any of us would benefit from that realistically. But
no. But the art in that reminded me a lot of Prophet.
Okay. Yeah.
Biotechnology. Yeah, it's superb. It's really great and really varied.
Yeah, and while we haven't mentioned every story, there isn't a bad one among it, as we've both said frequently in this episode. With the Kickstarter, I ended up getting the deal that got me the most books, because that's who I have become. So All We Ever Wanted, Loved and Lost, and This Nightmare Kills Fascists, which I particularly like the name of because it sounds like the name of a song by some kind of post-hardcore band I would have definitely listened to.
Yeah,
absolutely. Fact, I think that's worth pointing out. Every single name here does sound like a title from a post-hardcore band.
The whole thing has a kind of sense of optimistic punk.
Yeah, and that's what I'm here for. So sweet. But I like to think we'll check out some of their Kickstarters in the future and probably talk about some of these other books in the future, let's be honest.
Yeah, most definitely.
So on that note, we've been Will and Zach. This has been Bigger Than Capes. And remember that comics are
bigger than capes.
Bigger than capes.
Bigger than capes.